All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight, presented by FanDuel here at The Volume. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope all of you guys had a great weekend. I got to finally get out of town a little bit with my wife. I love Tucson, Arizona, but these few months here, when it gets to be 105 degrees every day, you have to find a way to get away a couple of times because it can be truly oppressive to walk outside on a sunny day in Arizona in mid-June. And we got up to Prescott, which is northern Arizona. It's just about 10, 15 degrees cooler, and it's a little more grassland than it is desert. And a buddy of mine, his family lives up there, and we got to relax for a little bit. It was very nice to get away. That said, we have an action-packed week ahead of us with NBA free agency that started off with a bang today with Kyrie Irving and many reports. First of all, from Adrian Wojnarowski, that he has requested permission to engage other teams with potential sign-and-trade scenarios that Brooklyn has approved. And Jake Fisher from Bleacher Report reported that Kyrie Irving is looking increasingly likely to decline his player option and potentially sign with the Lakers for $6 million on the mid-level exception. So, obviously, absolute chaos. We're going to start today by talking about that Kyrie situation. I also am going to do a series of free agency previews for the biggest teams around the league. We'll see how many we can get to depending on how much time we have this week. But today we're going to hit the Nets and the Lakers. And then at the end, I have some thoughts that I want to share about this raging debate that is continuing between Draymond Green, leading the new media, versus the establishment media, or basically everybody else that Draymond's been talking trash to. I was driving back this morning, listening to a couple of great podcasts. I highly recommend you guys check out Colin Cowherd's podcast with Peter Guber, who is one of the majority owners for the Golden State Warriors. That was incredibly interesting. Tons of good life advice for everybody in their career, I thought, in that one. And then I was also listening to Draymond Green, his first podcast since the night of the championship. And man, oh man, it was just going down the line, just letting everybody know what it is. It was definitely a very interesting podcast to listen to on my way home, but I did have some thoughts there, so I'll share those towards the end. But let's start with Kyrie. Oh, and really quickly, before we get started, if you guys could please subscribe to the Volume's YouTube channel, like this video, that does a lot to help us. Also follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys can see any show announcements and other video content that I do. And then last but not least, if you miss one of these shows for whatever reason and you want to see an audio recording of it because you can't get back to YouTube, follow our podcast feed, which for the time being is under Lakers Tonight. So let's start with Kyrie. It's important to understand, to get a better feel for why this situation is going the way it's going, to remember what went wrong in Cleveland and what went wrong in Boston. Because let's go back to 2017. Everything was hunky-dory. Team was great. Really, everything outside of the awful NBA Finals where they got, gentlemen swept by the best basketball team I've ever seen, the 2017 Warriors. Outside of that, it was a very good season. They had some ups and downs in the regular season, but it's because they just had general malaise. They didn't respect their opponents in the Eastern Conference. And when you play 50 of your 32 games against your own conference, you're just generally going to have, especially in the East around that time, a relatively easy schedule, and that team sleptwalked through most of the season. But then they got into the playoffs, and they just destroyed everybody. They didn't lose a single playoff game in the Eastern Conference until the Eastern Conference Finals, when they blew like a 20-point lead late against the Celtics and then promptly destroyed them the next two times they played. So that team was a great team. And after they lost in the NBA Finals, after they got gentlemen swept, Kyrie Irving went to the press conference table and basically said, I cherish these moments I'm paraphrasing here, but cherish these moments playing with LeBron, need to learn as much from him while I have a chance. Very positive, right? And then almost immediately after that, things went south. And we started hearing about the reports of Kyrie wanting a trade. And now we've learned in retrospect through reporting that throughout the 2017 playoff run, Kyrie Irving started to emotionally pull away from the team. He has now since admitted to this I think it was when he was on with Eddie Gonzalez with the ETCs. But he has now since admitted to the fact that he pulled away from that team for no particular reason, too, he said. It was just something he was going through, okay? We also learned after the fact that he was very upset that the Cavaliers were considering trading him. He took that personally. Now, we know in retrospect, it had a lot to do with the fact that he was emotionally pulling away from the team. They were just imagine a veteran group of guys in pursuit of a championship, and one of your best players, your second best player, is just kind of pulling away, sitting over there quiet by his locker by himself. It started to internally cause some concern, which is why they considered shopping him. And it wasn't like they were shopping him for bums. They were potentially shopping him for Paul George. And LeBron ended up nixing the deal because he would not commit long-term to the Lakers. But for whatever reason, that saga, the trade plus whatever was going on with him during that playoff run, convinced Kyrie all of a sudden that the Cavs were against him. And as soon as he got to that point, it was like bridges burned. And we learned after the fact that LeBron was on vacation when he heard about this trade rumor, and LeBron was freaking out, doing everything he can, trying to call Kyrie to try to fix the thing, and he couldn't even get in contact with him. Kyrie, as soon as he decided he was done with Cleveland, he was done with Cleveland. There was no chance. He even told them, if you bring me back next year, I will get knee surgery. That's how nuclear he went with the Cavs. Now we fast forward to Boston. In Boston, he does that weird thing at the beginning of the season where he gets on the microphone in front of the crowd and says, if you guys will have me, I'll come back next year. He does that commercial with his father where he talks about potentially having his jersey hung in the rafters. Everything's good. But the Boston Celtics fan base started to get frustrated with Kyrie. Some of the passive-aggressive way that he talked to his teammates, his lack of commitment to the defensive end of the floor, his struggles in the playoff series against the Milwaukee Bucks. And Kyrie built a vendetta of some sort of personal beef between him and the Celtics fan base, and he was done with them. Jason Tatum was one of his best friends. He'd had no issues inside the locker room. Obviously, the young guys were sick of Kyrie talking about them that way, but there was no basketball reason for him to leave the Celtics. It was a personal beef between him and the fan base that pushed him out the door. The point being here is in the two previous situations, there was no rational reason for Kyrie to leave. His best chance to win was to stay in Cleveland and after 2017, run it back with the 2018 Cavs, who went to the finals without him. That was his best chance. He didn't want that. He wanted to get out because of a personal beef. His best bet was to stay with the Boston Celtics, who were up and coming with all of the talent they had in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. He didn't want anything to do with that because of his own personal feelings about the situation, and he left. So whatever rationale you have for this Nets situation, if you think it has to do with basketball, it doesn't. If you think it has to do with money, it doesn't. He burnt the bridge with Nike when he was making all that money. So, as you guys can see, this is irrelevant to Kyrie. Whatever thought process you have about the way this is supposed to go, he's operating under a different thought process. And it's not entirely unusual. People have different priorities. Some people are more money motivated and some people are not. Kyrie strikes me as the kind of guy who doesn't care about that kind of thing. But I do genuinely believe that he loves Kevin Durant. I actually know this for a fact, that Kevin Durant and Kyrie are way closer than any of you guys even realize. But that said, that wasn't enough for Kyrie for all of the bridge that was burnt between him and the Nets franchise. And I think it's both ways at this point, too. I think the Nets are sick of him, too. For obvious reasons that we don't have to get into, having to do with Kyrie being a flake. Like a factually repeated offender flake, okay? There's just no other way around it. So the question is, why have the Lakers emerged as a partner? Because Adrian Wojnarowski also reported this morning that the other 28 teams are just hard pass. We're not doing it, right? So why have the Lakers emerged as a partner? Well, a couple of different reasons. First of all, it's a little bit easier to understand or accept the idea of taking a guy that's as volatile as Kyrie on when you have a personality like LeBron James in the locker room, especially one that's dealt with Kyrie in the past. Also, Kyrie and LeBron have since patched things up from what happened in Cleveland. I think that partnership makes it a little bit less dangerous than it would be in other situations there. But most importantly, the Lakers are desperate. The Lakers this year, as it turned out, didn't have nearly enough talent. And it came down to a bunch of different things. LeBron aging to the point where he started to break down physically, so now he doesn't play in 82 games anymore. It came down to Anthony Davis's rapid decline from being a guy who was a surefire top 5 player in the league to a guy that might not even be top 15 right now. That's the type of decline that he experienced. So those two things, in addition to gutting the roster for Russell Westbrook, who is a bad basketball player in the role that he wants to play, that gutted this team of talent. And so they don't have the luxury of turning down talent for the sake of whatever off-court concerns that you might have. You know, I worked in real estate before I got into this business, and one of the people that trained me used to say, generate so you don't have to tolerate. Essentially, the idea is if you generate a long list of clients that are loyal to you, then you can be nitpicky about which people you want to work with. Working with the general public is hard, as you can imagine. Now just imagine there's $500,000 on the table or $250,000 on the table. As you can imagine, people get very sensitive, people get very emotional, it gets intense. And so when you're dealing with the general public, at the beginning of your career, you kind of have to. You know, you have to take whatever you can get because you're trying to get a footing in the business, but your goal is to get to a point where you can turn people away. Oh, you're a jerk? You're an asshole? I don't want to deal with you. Oh, you're dishonest? You know, oh, you're a scumbag? Okay, no thanks. I don't care if you're going to pay me $10,000 to help you facilitate this transaction. I just don't want to work with you. You have to generate enough business so that you don't have to tolerate the downsides. The Lakers do not have enough talent to be able to turn away Kyrie Irving. They absolutely must take him if he comes. Now, maybe they'll get lucky and they'll get him for that $6 million traded player exception. We'll get into that a little bit further when we talk about the Lakers as a free agency preview. But the bottom line is the Lakers, in their current predicament with year 20 LeBron and with Anthony Davis and with their lack of future assets, they have no choice but to take the talent that is available to them. And in this case, it's Kyrie Irving. And that means that there's risk. It's very, like, if Kyrie Irving halfway through the season decides he needs a 2-week emotional break, you can't be upset about that if you're the Lakers. He did it 2 years in a row, basically, right? Did it twice 2 years ago, and then he had the COVID stuff this year. Like Kyrie, it's essentially more likely than not that he'll do some weird stuff during the season next year. He'll probably leave you hanging a few times. But again, you don't have the luxury of turning that away. Now, all of that said, what do I actually expect to happen? I think that cooler heads will prevail, particularly with Kevin Durant and the Nets. And they'll end up re-signing Kyrie to some sort of mid-range max contract. Like, I think they'll ditch the qualifiers, like that 65-game limit that they wanted. I think it'll be more like a 3-year max, something like that, that's fully guaranteed. That's just my guess. And the reason why is simple, and we're going to get to it a little bit deeper here in just a minute when we talk about the Nets free agency preview. But there's no advantage to Brooklyn letting him go, and it's a terrible case of asset management. Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving right now have lower trade value than they've ever had, for obvious reasons. We don't have to get into them. So trading them now, even if you think this is an absolute disaster, you're better off waiting. And even if halfway through the season, if Kyrie can just put up 30 points twice in a week, it might trick some GM into thinking it's a good option again, and maybe you can move him for some quality pieces. So the Nets, as a smart, well-run organization, I expect Sean Marks and for Joe Tsai to come to the table and be like, okay, we really don't want to do this, but we got to pay him. Because if we lose him, we basically have to blow this whole thing up. And if we blow this whole thing up, why not blow it up in a year when KD or Kyrie and Ben Simmons have more trade value because they've actually played some more basketball? So that's what I expect to happen. But I just wanted you guys to understand, like, this is not exactly the first time Kyrie has had this type of emotional disconnect from another NBA team. And it's important for us to discard any of our normal logical progression of thinking because Kyrie doesn't follow that path. He is a very different thinker. He's very non-traditional in the way he sees the world, in the way he sees money, in the way he sees everything. So whatever you think he should think, he's not going to think. So we need to change our expectations. So let's dive into this Brooklyn Nets thing for their free agency preview. So again, like I said earlier, Ben Simmons didn't play basketball at all last year and had injury concerns, right? Bad back and mental health stuff, and straight up just didn't play basketball. So, and then the last time he played basketball was him looking utterly useless in an NBA playoff series. against a pretty mediocre team in the Atlanta Hawks, right? So Ben Simmons' trade value is at an all-time low. It will never be lower than it is right now. Because even if you went and played basketball next year and struggled, he would at least be playing basketball, which would automatically increase his trade value. Kyrie Irving. What Boston did to Brooklyn wasn't all Kyrie's fault. As a matter of fact, there's an argument, I wouldn't make it, but there's an argument that Kyrie outplayed KD in that series. Again, I wouldn't make that argument. But my point is Kyrie was not to blame for this latest Brooklyn Nets collapse in terms of what happened in the playoff series. You could say maybe continuity for him not being in and out of the lineup and stuff. The point is Kyrie is still damn good at the game of basketball. What has nuked his value is his flakiness. What happened 2 years ago when he repeatedly was taking leave of absences from the team, and what happened last year with the COVID-19 shot, right? It was not basketball related. So it's never going to get lower than this, because if he goes to training camp next year, finishes training camp, plays in a few preseason games, and then plays 15 of the first 20 games of the regular season and looks like Kyrie and puts up 23 points per game on 60% true shooting, that's Kyrie Irving. And almost over, just in that 15-game stretch or 20-game stretch, he will massively resuscitate his own trade value. So, you guys know how I feel. I just did a whole thing about this last week. You have to acknowledge reality. And the reality is this Brooklyn Nets team is not a top-tier contender. So that automatically gears me towards rebuild, because I just don't think they have the pieces that they need to win the trophy. That said, timing is everything here. Usually, you want to blow things up sooner. Why? Because guys age, right? And maybe if you trade Kevin Garnett 1 year earlier than 1 year later, you can get one additional first-round pick or one additional quality player, versus if it's a year later, teams will be less willing to view him as some value, right? That's usually the thought process. The difference here is Ben and Kyrie are far more likely to increase their trade value, even just by next year's trade deadline. So in this case, even if internally, if Sean Marks is looking at if Sean Marks and Josiah are looking at each other and they're like, hey, this thing is over, it's not going to work. Even then, you have to bring everybody back, because you stand to gain so much more by playing more basketball with these guys to raise their trade value. And who knows, maybe you put this together and there's some sort of organic, amazing Ben, Kyrie, Kevin fit, and it all works, and that's great. You've nothing to lose there. But if it's a disaster, in February when it's the trade deadline, you're in the exact same predicament you were in this summer, which is Kyrie and Ben Simmons have no trade value. Okay, great. That's what we were already dealing with. So it's one of those things where I might be leaning towards blowing things up if I'm Brooklyn, but there's literally no reason to do it right now. Now, Kyrie might literally force you to do that. If Kyrie opts out, and just because he's like, screw you guys, I'm done with you. If he opts out, which like we talked about earlier, Jake Fisher has reported is likely. If he does that, then you have to press self-destruct. Because if Kyrie, KD, and Ben Simmons is not enough, KD and Ben Simmons is definitely not enough. And and this is coming from someone who has the utmost respect for Kevin Durant. So the way I look at it, in this specific case, if you lose Kyrie, you blow it up. But if Kyrie ends up agreeing to terms with you to come back on a contract, you keep everybody. And you ride this thing out at least until the trade deadline. And if it doesn't look good then, you can at least move them, because Kyrie and Ben will at least have been playing basketball at that point. So now let's fast forward to the most likely scenario, which I talked about earlier. Ben Simmons is back. Kyrie Irving is back. Kevin Durant is back. I actually like the basketball fit there. The Kyrie KD fit, as we've seen in the last 2 years, has been amazing on the offensive end of the floor. There have been no issues there. Ben Simmons, in theory, is a fantastic basketball fit with that. He could take primary defensive assignments on the perimeter as well as anybody in the league. Ben Simmons in his prime, healthy, on the basketball court, guarding a perimeter player is a sight to behold. One of my favorite things was 2 years ago, the last year Ben Simmons actually played, was watching him play in a regular season game against Dame Lillard. And I watched him utterly swallow up Dame Lillard. Couldn't even get shots off. He was struggling mightily just to get clean looks at the rim. That's Dame freaking Lillard. That's the type of talent that Ben Simmons is on the defensive end of the floor. When you fill that in with his playmaking and his ability to get the grab a rebound and push the break as a ball handler to allow KD and Kyrie to fill the wings as shooters, what he can do as a screen and roll big man is basically a short roller, kind of like what Draymond Green, well, really what Bruce Brown was doing for them last year. And his, again, we talked about this in our season wrap-up pod, but size and athleticism from a perimeter player, in my opinion, is the most valuable thing in the league right now. Ben Simmons is a massive, arguably one of the best examples of that for a role player, which is what Ben Simmons is at this point. He obviously has to make monumental improvements elsewhere in his game to become a star. So I love the original basketball fit there. We have Joe Harris coming back. It took as much time as he needed off last year, got the surgery that he needed. Joe Harris should be back and should look good next year. He's a solid defensive player. He could do lock and trail stuff and guard because he's big and strong. He's not overly tall, but he's chunky. He's like got a low center of gravity, and he's strong, so he can hold his own against bigger, stronger wings. And he can shoot. He can shoot the shit out of the basketball. So I like the Joe Harris fit. Patty Mills is most likely going to opt in. That's just what I expect. We'll see. Bruce Brown's a free agent, but they have his bird rights, so they'll probably retain him. But they have no draft picks. So that's basically your 10 guys right there. And so from that standpoint, they're going to have to fill in some things on the periphery there. And I'm going to say the same thing that I'm going to say about the Lakers soon. You have plenty of offense. You have plenty of shooting. But your biggest weakness is Boston was so much bigger than you on the perimeter. And you had too many minutes for Seth Curry, too many minutes for Patty Mills, too many minutes for Goran Dragic, too many small perimeter players that got manhandled by the bigger, stronger Boston perimeter players. So you need to target bigger role players. Now, I was looking into this morning, just trying to find some examples, and I'll give you some and I don't feel particularly passionate about any of these because there are a lot of them. There are dozens of players available this summer that fit this mold that you can have somewhere between the veteran minimum and the mid-level exception that are between 6'5" and 6'8", that can guard multiple positions and can do basic things on offense. A couple of them off the top of my head: DeAndre Bembry, Daniel House, who looked great this year, Josh Jackson, Wesley Matthews, Otto Porter Jr. It could potentially be available if the Warriors can't resign him. Those are just a handful of examples, but there are dozens more. And the reason why I'm not overly picky about who is because these are small roles we're asking to fill. We are not asking for, Mikal Bridges here, a guy to be defensive player of the year for you and give you 18 points a game. That's not what we're asking. These are small roles next to all-star players. My favorite example of this is the 2020 Lakers. Because LeBron James and Anthony Davis took so much of the workload off the table, it allowed guys like KCP, who are pretty average NBA role players, to look great because they had small roles and they were able to hit those small roles out of the park. And so from that standpoint, if everything else pans out, if Ben Simmons is healthy, Kyrie Irving is available, Kevin Durant looks like Kevin Durant, Joe Harris is back, Patty Mills is in there. If you have all of those things, then that allows you to go up to Daniel House and be like, all I need you to do is guard this dude, be reliable in our help scheme, and stand over there in the corner. And if you catch the ball and you're open, shoot it. And if they close out at you, attack the closeout. And guess what? You'll have lots of space to operate because no one's going to want to leave Kevin Durant, Patty Mills, and Kyrie Irving. Right? So having that small role allows those types of players to succeed. Don't overthink it. Don't look for a Malik Monk like the Lakers did. Malik Monk is awesome. But alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis, it's actually more important for him to do little things than for him to go score 25. Does that make sense? So I would target those types of players, defensive-minded role players that are athletic on the perimeter and have a good amount of size because they will do the dirty work alongside your stars. And then last but not least with Brooklyn, Kyrie and KD are uniquely immune to spacing concerns. So let's say you're looking at a guy like a Josh Jackson or a Wesley Matthews, a bigger, more athletic wing, although Wesley's a little shorter, but he's a great defensive player for his position. Guys like that, you get concerned like, oh, his shooting percentage, he's only 34% on wide open threes or whatever it is. And you're right, like guys are going to ignore him often and sit in the paint. Just ask the Milwaukee Bucks. But Kyrie and KD are uniquely immune to spacing. Spacing concerns are a problem for slashers who rely on getting consistent rim pressure because the paint is clogged. But because those situations force you to shoot over the top of the defender. But what if your specialty is to shoot over the top of the defender? Kyrie and KD, their bread and butter is getting to off the dribble jump shots, getting separation with step backs and side steps and crossovers and things along those lines. So they are comfortable shooting over the top. So you can do things like play non-floor spacing role players and understand that Kyrie and KD are going to still have a certain amount of success scoring the basketball because they're just comfortable in those situations. So again, who the heck knows what's going to happen with the Nets this week? But that specific plan I just laid out is what I think is the best plan for Brooklyn, provided that Kyrie ends up re-signing, which I still expect him to do.